Our life is lived locally. Our family, our friends, our work, the connections that we have, all of that is in a location. There are meaningful stories that inform the contours of our life. There's, of course, connections to broader events and the historical sweep of history. Local history connects those who live in a specific location to that which has come before. To illustrate this, we are going to look at one theme in the history of Aiken, South Carolina, where I live and work. Aiken is known in the modern era as the home of the Savannah River Site, a facility built to produce plutonium for nuclear weapons, or as one of the horse capitals of the world, home to horse trainers whose efforts have produced 3 Kentucky Derby winners, and the city which hosts the World Series of Polo. There are polo games, yes, on Sunday afternoons, steeplechase races, horse speed trials, and equestrian competitions. We will focus, though, on trains, not on horses or nuclear weapons. Why? Well, Aiken was founded because of a railroad. Captain William White Williams, a cotton merchant from Charleston, built a house in what is now Aiken and looked for a way to cheaply ship cotton from his fields in Hamburg to Charleston. Williams, with others, formed the South Carolina Canal and Railroad Company, which was chartered by the South Carolina legislature in 1827 to build the railroad. According to legend, the surveyors, because of the steep grade into Horse Creek Valley, could not get the line closer than 15 miles to Williams' fields. But one of them was smitten with Williams' daughter, and in exchange for her hand, found a way to reroute the tracks and use a steam-powered winch, later a counterweight locomotive, to get the steam engine up the grade. Whether the legend is true or not, he married his love a year later. The railroad, completed in 1833, was 136 miles long and ran from Charleston to Hamburg, South Carolina, right across the Savannah River from Augusta, Georgia. At the time, it was the longest railroad, not only in the United States, but in the world. The bottleneck caused by the winch led to the creation of the city of Aiken in 1830, 15 miles from the end of the line, as a stopover point. The city was named after the first president of the railroad company, William Aiken Sr. of Charleston. It became a summer resort for people from Charleston trying to escape the oppressive heat and mosquitoes on the coast. Now, this is a statue of William Aiken Sr. on Newberry Street here in downtown Aiken. He's looking for the train, holding his watch in his hand, waiting for his creation to come to be. Sadly, he was killed in a horse riding accident in 1831 and never got to see the train completed. His son, though, William Jr., later became governor of South Carolina, and their home is a historic site, even today, in Charleston, South Carolina. Railroad played a significant role in the Civil War story in Aiken. Cotton mills in Graniteville, about 7 miles from here, provided uniforms and tents for the Confederate Army, which were shipped via the railroad. The paper mill in Bath, located west of Aiken, made paper for Confederate money. Augusta, Georgia, was the center for gunpowder manufacturing in the Confederacy. Troops and material regularly traveled through here on the way to other battlefields. When Sherman's army entered South Carolina on February 1st, 1865, Major General Hugh Judson Kilpatrick's 5th Cavalry marched through the countryside, largely down the railroad line. The Army destroyed the original line, burning the wooden ties and twisting the rails around trees so they couldn't be used again. They also burned the towns of Blackville and Barnwell to the ground. In a letter to Sherman, Kilpatrick renamed the city of Barnwell as Burnwell. On February 11, 1865, the Union Army entered the city of Aiken down the railroad line. They were met by forces led by Major General Joseph Wheeler, a native of nearby Augusta, Georgia. Wheeler had set a trap, creating a V-shaped formation with his cavalry among the houses designed to collapse around the soldiers as they entered deeply into the V. A stray shot from a Confederate soldier prematurely alerted Kilpatrick, who ordered an immediate assault. The ensuing battle featured hand-to-hand cavalry combat over about a 3-block area. It was centered here in front of the Baptist Church, about 2 blocks from the train depot. The battle ended as the only Confederate victory in Sherman's Carolinas campaign, sparing Aiken, the cotton mills, and, Wheeler believed, Augusta from Sherman's scorched earth policy. Never intending to go to Augusta, Kilpatrick's forces withdrew and rejoined Sherman for the more successful and devastating attack on Columbia a few days later. In the wake of the war, Aiken's identity changed. Ironically, even though the South won the Battle of Aiken, Northerners peacefully invaded and largely conquered Aiken by the end of the century. In 1891 and 92, Thomas and Louise Hitchcock from New York spent the winter in Aiken. Recognizing the climate and the soil was ideal for horses, they invited their friends William and Elizabeth Whitney to join them the next year. In a short time, a horse community developed, including thousands of acres devoted to fox hunts, riding, and thoroughbred racing. Hundreds of high society Northerners came to the winter colony in Aiken. Tragically, in 1898, Elizabeth Whitney was injured in a horse accident. She was sent by train from Aiken to New York, still in her bed, where she died a few months later. Whitney believed the delay caused by an inadequate train depot contributed to her death, so he enlisted an architect, probably the famous Stanford White, to design a new showplace depot, which was built in 1899. The depot served as the point of arrival for thousands of Northern socialites, including members of the Vanderbilt, Mellon, and Astor families, until it was closed in 1954 and demolished. There are many interesting stories about people who came through this depot and spent time in Aiken. The Prince of Wales, movie stars, musicians, celebrities, and millionaires, and one notable President of the United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Roosevelt had a long-standing love affair with Lucy Mercer Rutherford, which began when she was hired as personal assistant to Roosevelt's wife Eleanor in 1914, when the future president was Assistant Secretary of the Navy. Letters between the two were discovered by Eleanor in Franklin's luggage, and she and Roosevelt's mother extracted a promise from Franklin to end the affair for the sake of his political career. In 1920, Lucy married Winthrop Rutherford, a widower 30 years her senior, who happened to spend winters in Aiken. They built a house on Berry Road, less than a mile from this depot. Roosevelt did not keep his promise to his wife. Letters between Roosevelt and Rutherford from 1920 through World War II were found in the effects of Rutherford's daughter, Barbara Rutherford Knowles, who died in Aiken in 2005. When Roosevelt would come south to Warm Springs, Georgia, his train would stop in Aiken. About a block from the depot is a short spur of track which backs up to the Wilcox Hotel. The presidential train car would stop right behind the hotel, and Roosevelt would be escorted in his wheelchair through a tunnel that led into the basement of the hotel and would take the elevator to the 3rd floor to his favorite suite, still called the Roosevelt Suite, by the way. He would be joined by Lucy, whose home was a few blocks away. There is evidence that she visited the White House during the war, more frequently after her husband died in 1944, aided and abetted by Roosevelt's daughter Anna. Lucy Mercer Rutherford was with Roosevelt when he died in Warm Springs, but was brought back to Aiken by her chauffeur before Eleanor arrived and discovered that the affair had long continued. Rutherford died herself of leukemia in 1948. After the original depot was demolished in 1954, the site sat empty. This replica was completed in 2010, following the original design of 1899. The interior was modified to meet modern building standards and projected usage. The building, now the Welcome Center for the City of Aiken, also houses a train museum and is open to the public daily. One exhibit features a wonderful set of 9 dioramas, each painstakingly built in HO scale from historic photos of towns through which the train passed from Charleston to Hamburg, including Aiken at the turn of the century. Visitors could watch a model train engine travel from Charleston through the countryside. Outside are Pullman cars, like the ones that brought the thousands of people here from all over. The memories live here and bring joy and knowledge and a sense of heritage and connection to new generations, including my grandsons Lucas and Isaiah. That is how a love of history begins. Life is local. Of course, there are events and social forces that shape our lives that stretch across the nation and the world. But it is important to remember what shaped the world closest to us, the experiences that made the world we live in. That is what local history does.